Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to the SE Collective webinar. This platform is for all students, passionate executives towards environment. Anybody who would like to contribute or share uh, sustainable practices in the commercial setting is something that we're looking at. We are looking at having 2 to 3 webinars over the next 2 years. And our first speaker is Mr. Aniket Jalgaonkar, who is a principal consultant at Environment Resource Management. He has been with them since 2008. He's a multifunctional consultant across the environmental and sustainability domains at various stages of operations life cycle. His topic today, which he'll be highlighting on, is water sustainability and stewardship. And he will be emphasizing on an effective means to drive community development. So over to you, Aniket, and thank you very much for joining us today. And I'll leave it up to you.
Yes, Vivi, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure being here. Before starting on, I would just like to get a quick check if you can hear me well and you can see the screen properly.
We can hear you well, Aniket.
Great, lovely. All right, thanks. Hi everybody. It's really good to be here. A few probably just over a decade back, I was probably in the same shoes that you are in right now, just out of my college and kind of wondering what I could do next. And just like Vivek said, the main driver and my passion lied in protecting and caring for the environment and the overall gambit of sustainability. So the topic that I'll be talking about is a very interesting one, and one that is very close to our hearts, and also the one that is impacting us the most. That's around water, because we are all seeing that water is increasingly becoming a major business driver as well as business disruptor in the overall environment that we are in, where there are very few industries, governments, or even societies that are spared from the overall impairment of not having water in sufficient quantities and sufficient quality accessible to us throughout the year. Let me just go to the next slide. Yeah, so before getting on to the topic, just a few words about ERM. So I work for ERM. As Vivek said, I'm a principal consultant. I've been working with them since the year 2008. That's over 13 years now. ERM, or Environmental Resources Management, is the world's leading and global provider of environmental, social, health, safety, risk, and sustainability services, or what we also call as EHSS. And unlike some of the other service providers in this domain, ERM is the only all environmental consulting firm which actually does consulting only in this space and this space only. So we are spread over 160 offices in 40 countries. I think these numbers are a little bit misleading. We are now more than 5,000 people globally, and we work with most of the global Fortune 500 companies that are operating across the geographies, and we have projects in more than 170 countries. And this year is actually the 50th year of ERM's existence, so we are celebrating our silver jubilee. So just kind of going into the topic here, it is estimated that if the present trends continue, approximately under 2 billion people in various countries of the world will be living under water scarcity by 2025. If you just put total population into perspective, that's 2/3 of the world population that is going to be subjected to water stress. And I think who would know it better than us? We in India are one of the front runners in handling water stress on a yearly basis in various parts of our country. Some striking numbers as well. 21 major cities, that includes some of the leading metros and tier 2 cities such as Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, are racing towards reaching zero groundwater levels by 2020-2021. zero groundwater level actually means an acute condition or state of groundwater stress, and which is already affecting over 100 million people in the country across these cities. And 12% of the country's population is already living under day zero scenario. This is thanks to the excessive groundwater pumping, an inefficient and wasteful water management system, and years of deficient rainfall. Some of the more privileged ones like us who are sitting into big cities may not really feel the wrath of it, because we have the luxury of just opening the taps in our houses and having a steady supply of water for us 24/7. But that is probably just small percentage of the total stress that has been faced by our other countrymen and women. Another kind of quick glimpse, again, this is something that we in big cities may not relate to, but the fact is this is a reflection of the reality. And 70% of country's water is contaminated, which basically means not fit for drinking without treatment, without having any health ill effects. 35% of households do not have proper drinking water on their premises. They have to scout large distances to get access to that water. And 84% of rural households do not have access to piped water supply. They have to again scout for it, maybe rely on tankers or any other sources. So India's first major climate crisis is already at its doorsteps, and it is in shape of water. We all may have heard a lot about climate change and how it is impacting the overall world economy and societies. But we in India have been facing impacts of climate change for over a decade now. For those of you who are already aware of these are the what they call as SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. These are the 17 key themes that the United Nations has developed as priority areas. And you will be amazed to know that at least 8 to 12 of these are directly or indirectly related to water. Quick picture of how water stress affects India. So the red colors and the maroon colors indicate high stress, a high water stress, or basically not having enough water available throughout the year. And you can actually see that almost half of the country or more than that is in the zone which is of high or extreme high water stress. And it is also known that most of the manufacturing industries, most of the businesses are actually located in these high stress areas. Now looking at what water related risks are. So water is a multifaceted element or aspect or resource that we have. It can manifest itself in so many different ways. So what I will try to do over the next few slides is walk you through some of the various attributes or risks that are related to water. The first theme is really around water availability, which means not having sufficient amount of water. So the first risk around water availability is categorized as physical risks, which has 2 further subcategories of water availability, or availability of water in sufficient quantities, and water quality as well. So the risks around water availability is having continuous water supply through lean seasons as well, having enough water during my peak demand or my peak requirement, having a reliable supply of water throughout the year, and also infrastructure challenges, specifically if I'm getting water from a municipal source or from an industrial development authority which has laid kilometers and kilometers of pipelines to get water from maybe a dam, or maybe they have a treatment plant. Then if these are, if there are any challenges around this kind of infrastructure as well. The second challenge around physical water risks is around water quality, which actually means not having sufficient good quality water available for my operations or my requirements. And this could be the standard quality requirements and standards that are applicable in that country or for my particular processes. Contamination and pollution of the water quality sources. We know that most of the rivers in India today are highly contaminated. So are the aquifers or groundwater, which has been used by a majority of the people and the businesses. Not having good quality water can actually increase the requirements of water treatment and thereby drive the water costs as well. And if my operations is in a way contributing to that poor quality water because of my operations or my wastewater discharges, then those may extend certain contamination related liabilities for me and my business. The second challenge is a very interesting one, and this is also a theme of our discussion today, and that's around stakeholder or community challenges, which are usually driven at a watershed or at a catchment level. So as we know, agriculture is the largest water user in a country like India, where approximately 85 to 87% of the total water, be it groundwater or be it surface water, is being used for and by agriculture. Hence, this becomes a very important water user, or what we call as a competing or a shared water user in my basin or at my catchment level. Apart from agriculture, you may also have communities or villages or settlements who are relying on that water resource as our industries are. Apart from the communities who are relying on this, we will have industries and other commercial users who are located in my vicinity who will also be relying on that water. And if there are any big cities or towns, the municipal water supply is also in a way taking a share of the total water that is available. So that's basically apportioning or sharing the water resource across with various stakeholders. A very important theme that is emerging out in this country over the last decade is community protests, wherein a certain communities residing in the vicinity of industries has a certain negative perception about industries, because industries are typically considered as the primary drivers for both water stress as well as water contamination. It is very important that the communities who are residing around us have a positive or a neutral perception towards the industries, and they don't think ill about the industries and don't hold them responsible for lack of water of a good quality. Pressure groups are also emerging out. These could be non-governmental organization or certain activism, which will put a certain type of industry or industries in a spotlight and hold them responsible and accountable for contaminating the water or using too much water. And community protests are obviously significant business continuity risk drivers, because we have seen the Coca-Colas of the world and the Pepsi-Colas of the world having to close their factories in India because of a certain community perception and protest. So community protests can be a very key business continuity risk for industries, all sorts of them, specifically the ones that are polluting in nature or the ones that use too much water for its processes. Third driver really is around regulatory or changing regulations, where we are seeing that regulations or laws are becoming more and more stringent. And this is going to go upwards from here, which means with every year, the regulations will become more and more stringent and more compliance specific. Industries specifically are very well vulnerable to this because they are the only ones who have to follow a certain type of regulatory requirement. And it is becoming challenging for industries to demonstrate compliance to the regulations and laws on a continual basis. And this is not only the current regulations, but also forward-looking regulations or forthcoming regulations, as in how will these change. So it's very important for industries to look beyond the current regulations and plan ahead of time, so that if the regulations change, they are well in depth and they are well accustomed and well informed to actually continue to being in compliance without changing much significantly. Certain type of regulations are also forcing industries to look at their efficiencies, which means what is efficiency at which they are using their water, and how are they discharging their wastewater, how are they recycling their water, and also forcing them to look beyond their premises or fence lines at a catchment level. And last but not the least, as I described some time back, liabilities related to contamination that could be caused by a certain industry because of discharges and disposals of wastewater and hazardous waste from their operations and premises. Last but not the least, and a very important one, reputation. It's important for everybody, isn't it? Whatever we do today, one of the key drivers for that is to maintain our reputation and improve it as we go on in the future. Some of these risks that I just mentioned about, specifically risks around compliance and risks about community perceptions and community conflicts, can actually do a large amount of damages to a company's reputation. And hence, it's quite important that we manage our business, we manage our water resources in such a way that we are as far away as we can from any reputational risks or erosion of brand to our industries. So just a few examples of how important these would be. So there is the brand erosion, there is the erosion of valuation, because if you cannot operate your businesses or your industries throughout the year, if it affects your production and your supply chains, then it can affect your revenue stream and valuation as well. It might lead to closure of certain units, and there are certain sustainability drivers wherein students today, like us on the call today, your customers, your regulators are looking at you very carefully, not just about what you are doing in your business, but also how you are doing it and how important is sustainability, climate change, and environment for your business, and how you handle it and how you integrate it in your day-to-day operations. With that, we come to the topic of water stewardship. So water stewardship is basically responsible usage of water resources, which basically mean that I use my water in a responsible way, such that it has minimal impact on the environment and on the water resources as much as I can. So there are certain aspects of businesses that could be impacted. This could be primary production, such as agri businesses or mining. This could be industrial operations, such as maybe metals processing, manufacturing, or energy generation. This could be commercial in nature, which means retail spaces, maybe offices, or maybe hospitality and recreation. Or this could be institutional as well, which means educational colleges, universities, hospitals, public facilities, and water and wastewater and sewage services that are servicing our big cities. So there are two main drivers for water stewardship. First is called as a risk push, which means you are in a way pushed to comply or become water stewards because of the 3 or 4 different categories of risks that we mentioned, where physical, regulatory, and reputational. So it's not proactive, it's more reactive, but still you will have to incorporate some aspects of water stewardship in order to continue doing business. The second part of water stewardship is reward pull, which actually means you want to go beyond your day-to-day operations and create a certain differentiation or create a market leadership by setting standards of using your water responsibly and having an inclusive development of not just your operations and your facilities, but also of the communities around you. These could be connecting multiple initiatives around water, wastewater, and communities that are happening around us today. This could also mean enhanced license to operate, because if you do good for the community will do good for you, and hence you might have an enhanced license to operate. And of course, with each one of these, you are trying to fortify your brand strength, and you are trying to be front runner in fortifying your reputation in the market today. So water stewardship is really around expanding our focus and efforts in water-stressed regions to protect people and nature in priority basins. So these are primarily of two types again. First is internal factors or internal focus, and second is an external or a basin focus. Internal focus is primarily what you do within your 4 walls. or your factories or your industries or your office spaces? How do you conserve water? How do you control the water that you use and wastewater that you discharge directly? And also, how do you maintain compliance towards all of these? The external basin focus is primarily around influence, which means how do you increase your influence in the basin that or in the catchment that you're operating in? How do you want to enhance the business continuity and resiliency of your operations? Understanding what basin risks are existing outside of your plant premises, which may impact you, and creating a proactive site water stewardship strategy and action plan so that you can go on a journey around that. And obviously identify opportunities to engage with other stakeholders. These could be communities, this could be regulators, these could be neighboring industries as well. You might say, oh, that seems like a lot of work. How do I go about it? The bottom line here is we are not trying to fix all the problems or all the issues in the basin, but we are trying to start a process which will bring about a very positive change. So what exactly is water stewardship? So water stewardship, as defined by Alliance for Water Stewardship or AWS, is the use of water that is socially equitable, environmentally sustainable, economically beneficial, achieved through a stakeholder inclusive process that involves site and watershed level actions. So this is by far one of the most complete definitions of water stewardship or water resource management that I have come across till today. So how do you go about this? The idea behind a water stewardship is to develop an integrated water resources management plan, which talks about source water security. So how do you ensure that availability infrastructure that is going to bring the water from the source to your premises is secured? What kind of commitments are we making to make sure that the water resources are conserved? And how do you enhance or maintain good quality of water within the watershed? The second aspect of it is water conservation within our fence, which means within our premises, how can we do good water accounting, which means knowing complete map of your water utilization, how much water is used where, how much water is getting lost, how much water is going into the watershed through leakages, and how much water is ending up into the product or going out as wastewater. How do we benchmark our processes with the sector, national or even international or global benchmarking standards? How do we really optimize the water that we are using, and whether we can implement certain rainwater harvesting or RWH projects within our premises? It will make sure that we are doing our little bit to make sure that we are capturing the water that is coming onto the earth through rain within our premises, and either using it in our processes or sending it back into the groundwater for recharge. The third very key vertical here, especially for polluting industries with a large wastewater footprint, is reusing and recycling that treated wastewater. So how do we go about optimizing our effluent treatment plant or ETP? How do we reuse our wastewater? How do we recycle it and effectively discharge it into the environment so that it has minimum damage on the groundwater, on surface water, and overall aspects of the environment? And what kind of watershed level or catchment level community actions can we actually implement to bring about a sea of change of positivity with respect to water sustainability? Whether we can implement certain rainwater harvesting projects at a watershed level or at a catchment level. Can we implement certain community-based initiatives, such as, we empower the communities to become water self-sustainable? How can we implement wash or water availability, sanitation, and hygiene projects in the catchment so that not only are the communities benefited from that, but also you make sure that the water resources and its quality where you are using is maintained as good as we can. And what kind of agri and farm-based initiatives can we implement, such as like micro irrigation, or maybe organic farming, or using pesticides and agrochemicals more responsibly so that they don't contaminate the groundwater and surface water, and so on and so forth. So some of the main drivers or purposes of integrated water resources management plan are really to have a more socially equitable water withdrawal, which means all the water users in the catchment get sufficient quantity of water to satisfy their needs. To have a more water efficient product, what we also call as water intensity, which means how much water am I using to make 1 unit of my product. So if I'm manufacturing a Coca-Cola, then how much liters of water am I using to make 1 liter or 1 kg of that Coca-Cola, which can also be used for labeling as well. This is going to help you lower cost of water sourcing, wastewater treatment, and discharge as well. And there are certain regulations which industries are required to follow to have rainwater harvesting and groundwater replenishment by a factor of the water that they are using in their production. So some of these initiatives can lower those targets for you. And of course, this can provide the plant with additional capacity of water, which can be used for maybe expansion of the plant or for the processes as well. And all in all, if you put all of this in a box, then the overall objective is to ensure long-term sustainability of water resources and your business equally. Hence, again, I think we have been through this once. These are the 4 pillars, just a repetition for you. All 4 pillars are equally important, where you kind of have effective water resources management plan implemented. You have a good water accounting and conservation, which is basically water governance. You have a robust community level water conservation plan, which extends not only to your premises, but also the stakeholders who are sharing water along with you, and identify certain alternate sources of water in the catchment. So some of the offsite or watershed level initiatives that could be implemented, and since this topic today is also focusing on how water stewardship is the driver to create impact in the communities, I just have a few pictures. There's no text here. I think pictures speak louder than words. This is a classical example of this. There are certain initiatives that could be taken by industry, by entrepreneurs, such as aspiring entrepreneurs such as you, to increase water security. So the picture to the left, that is check dams, is actually one of the projects that you can implement in rainwater harvesting, which means you stop water, you block water, you create a storage either in terms of surface water or infiltrate it into the groundwater recharge aquifers. The second option that you see here is desilting of ponds. With time, silt and soil from the neighboring catchments of village ponds gets deposited at the bottom of the ponds, which actually effectively reduces the capacity of the pond. Hence, the ponds cannot sustain water through the dry seasons. So desilting is a way in which you remove the silt from the ponds to increase the storage capacity. And the silt that you can see is actually very rich in organic matter and can be used for manure or as fertilizers in the farms, in the communities as well. Some other initiatives around is implementation of rainwater harvesting for certain public buildings, such as village schools or maybe village panchayats or community halls. So this picture kind of shows you how rainwater from the rooftops can be captured in these pipes and stored in this tank, which can then be, after some treatment, a very small and simple treatment can be used either directly for water usage, or it can be sent to what they call as rainwater harvesting pits or groundwater recharge pits, where it will go into the groundwater and recharge the aquifers. So a very interesting and very strong initiative that is coming up. And since most of you are aspiring entrepreneurs, you must have heard agri-tech. Many agri-tech companies are now coming up in India, sprouting, who are capitalizing certain technologies, digital, mechanical, or sustainability initiatives to actually increase productivity of crops and also improve the supply chain of bringing those crops safely towards the end customer. Hence, agriculture, especially sustainable agriculture, is very important aspect of the overall value chain that is spread around farming and agriculture. So some of the initiatives that many industries such as Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola and others are implementing is about providing low water intensity irrigation, which actually means drip irrigation or sprinklers, or what they also call as micro irrigation, which actually will improve the water efficiency of crops. As I told you some time back, 85% of groundwater in this country today is being used by agriculture directly and at an extremely low efficiency rates. Some other ways of managing sustainable agriculture is creating of farm ponds, which can store water during the monsoon season, the rainy seasons, and then be made available for usage during the other seasons or during the dry seasons for agriculture. So you capture rainwater, which would have flown away into the rivers during rainy season, and use it, you extend the life of that water. And also efficient pesticide management. As I said, pesticides are a source of contamination of soil, groundwater, and surface water. Although these are perceived to be beneficial to the crops itself, they are very dangerous to the humans who are coming in contact with any contaminated material along with that. So the community level wash or water access, sanitation and hygiene that can be implemented is, of course, construction of public toilets and sanitation, especially in the rural areas. Our Honorable Prime Minister has a target of making India 100% open defecation free, and it's catching up on a very high pace. Many industries are part of this program, and they are now implementing certain projects such as these to improve the sanitation access to people in the rural areas. Access to clean water in villages. Most of our villages are specifically water stress, specific in the summer seasons where you have low rainfalls and you have high heat, which leads to high evaporation. So what can you do to provide round the year access to villages and communities by implementing certain initiatives? And of course, as part of WASH again, developing a sewage and wastewater infrastructure in the villages and in the communities so that their wastewater will be conveyed and treated properly, which means it will lead to more healthy conditions, more hygienic conditions, and also minimum contamination of soil and groundwater and surface water because of unscientific disposal and discharge of untreated sewage. So that, some of the alternative water sourcing strategies that, and I think we have spoken about these some time already, are sourcing water from offsite wells through maybe the third-party vendors during lean season specifically, reusing of rainwater harvesting, water that is captured. This could be done on site, or if you have a large mine area, then you can use the mine pits as water storages, reuse of harvested rainwater at a catchment level as well, which means not within your premises but in the watershed, and surface water transfer from lakes, tanks, rivers, and canals. Desalination is a very promising technology, especially in the coastal areas, and also reclamation of municipal wastewater from villages, towns, and cities, and reclamation of industrial wastewater from nearby clusters. So all these are some of the options that are available today to increase the sustainability of water within the catchment where we operate. So that was the last slide from my end. I would just take a pause there and open the floor for any questions if there are any.
Aniket, thank you very much for your question. Number one is, I would like you to highlight We have a lot of students who are participating from different institutes, and we want them to be responsible citizens when it comes to saving water and water conservation. So, as a student, what can they do to be to inspire others and to collective understand the importance of water conservation? What would be your thoughts on this?
I think water, as I said, water is a is very primarily is very primary to us, right? It's a source of life, as we all know it as. Um, it is also one of the biggest challenges that we are facing today. And I think as a responsible citizen and as a next generation, which will be entering into the job market and into the business environment, it's very important that each one of us on the call today recognize the importance of water and importance of water stewardship that will basically not only make you a successful business, but also a responsible business. That we embark on that journey, we recognize it very early on at the beginning of our careers and make sure that in every step, we try to see what is the impact of our business on water resources, and not just ours, but that are shared by so many other water users. We make ourselves aware of it and also make the people around us, the business people around us, the key decision makers in our organizations or in the organizations that most of you will end into in the next few months or next few years, and bring about a sea of change over there.
Thank you, Aniket. There's one more question by Ms. Swati Aswal. She's asking, as new urban agriculture technologies are coming up, like hydroponics, aquaponics, and they are using less water compared to conventional farming. So, what are your views on such new methods? Are they sustainable at all, or can Indian farmers upskill themselves and adapt to these technologies, given the fact that they have so much monitoring to be considered as far as weather and environment factors? So,
Absolutely.
what are your views on that?
I, I think that's a very good question, and I think that kind of points us towards the new way of agri-tech, the businesses and communities and opportunities that we have in this country. There are many agri-tech companies who are now heavily investing in these technologies. This is a good big beginning. Obviously, these are all technologically intensive ways of doing agriculture or growing food. Uh, the key here is, as we spend more time and as we standardize these kind of techniques in our day-to-day lives, it will have the benefit of scale, which means there will be a huge exponential scalability to all these technologies. As the volumes go up, you will have the costs of these technologies coming down. You'll have more and more tools, you will have more and more aids that will make even the not so educated farmer use these tools, or you adapt these technologies or techniques of agriculture more and more and make it mainstream. And I think as agri-tech and as entrepreneurs, our focus should, yes, obviously be towards driving profits for our organizations and for our businesses, but also to make these technologies accessible more and more farmers, because that is what we need as a country. Food security and water security both combined together.
Great. Thank you, Aniket. One more question. How can an organization build their own water stewardship program? And could you share with us 1-2 examples on what are ways to promote these programs?
I think that's another very good question, and it's a good it's a move in the right direction. Water stewardship is a journey. I think it's kind of starts with trying to identify what the risks of what water sourcing for our businesses are, and eventually identifying opportunities which will help us minimize these risks in the future years. Water stewardship actually provides you with a framework of doing just that, identifying risks, identifying opportunities from these risks, and then eventually implementing them to bring about a much larger sea of change. There are a framework such as AWS or Alliance of Water Stewardship Standards, which actually are there to guide businesses in doing just that. So please take a look at Alliance for Water Stewardship or AWS. You can find them at www.a4ws.org.
Any questions? Students would like to ask a question? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Aniket.
Sure. It was a pleasure being here. And I wish everybody on this call a very bright career.
Aniket, we have one more question.
Yes.
As we if you look at the Q&A panels, the question says from Mr. Sanjay Gupta is, as we see that to purify the seawater is expensive and rainwater is also not as pure as before. So how do we get pure water in large amounts? What he's emphasizing on is that what are the ways that we can get large quantities of pure water to sustain the demand?
Absolutely. And yes, desalination is expensive. It is also energy intensive. So it is not as easy, and it's also technologically intensive. So however, the desalination technologies are becoming cheaper. However, as a process, desalination also has a larger detrimental impact to the overall ecology, because the rejects or the salts that are discharged from the desalination plants have a negative impact on the ecosystem, which could be flora, fauna, and coastal ecology. Yes, rainwater is no longer as pure as it used to be, but that doesn't mean that it is not a resource that is not available to us. With some amount of treatment, rainwater can still be used for certain processes which may not need good quality water or very pure quality water, which means for mixing, blending, flow washing, or even toilet flushing, and so on and so forth. So different streams of water can be used for different applications.
Thank you. Does anyone any questions, or we'll proceed on to the next speaker? Thank you very much, Mr. Aniket, for your time. Sure. And really appreciate you joining in.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day ahead, and wish you all the very best for your future.